Thank you, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Zembo, can we call the roll?
Mr. Bennell?
Here.
Mr. Kuzic?
Present.
Mr. Dietz?
Here.
Mrs. Ferraro? Here. Mr. Geisinger?
Present.
Mr. Kraft is absent. Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Vaughn?
Here.
And Mr. Warner?
Here.
All present except Mr. Kraft.
Okay, 8 present, 1 absent this evening. First item is the approval of the minutes of the August 17th, 2017, moved by Mr. Dietz by acclamation, seconded by Mr. Bennell. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Passes unanimously. Next, we have courtesy of the floor, and I have a few people signed up. Let's see if I can read this. Dean Browning, South Whitehall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that Lynn Erickson wanted to sign up. I've been told ladies first, so I will yield to Lynn.
Mr. Browning yields the balance of his time. Ms. Erickson, if you would. You can come forward at this time.
Good evening, members of council. Thank you. I wish to respectfully request that council members table the vote to move forward with the ordinance to tap hotel tax funding designated for further development of tourism facilities and community development initiatives. This program, I'd like the Da Vinci Science Center ask that the council table further action to allow a fair hearing of the Da Vinci Science Center's project and to allow time for us to work with all of you and with Tim and Mark and John to identify the potential for funding and how it might actually be structured. The Da Vinci Science City project will measurably increase the number of visitors to the county, promote visitation to other cultural and historical sites in the county, as well as to nearby restaurants and retail establishments. We believe that the result will be more heads in beds, more hotel taxes generated, and ultimately the potential for major real estate investment in Easton and in Northampton County. The proposed project will become an iconic destination in the county and the Lehigh Valley and make a strong statement to prospective residences and businesses about this region's commitment to a world-class education and to a STEM economy. So I ask that you consider tabling the vote to considering the ordinance to create the program called Facilities and Tourism Enhancement Hotel Room Rental Tax Grant Program to be administered by the Department of Community and Economic Development. Thank you.
Okay. Just for a matter of clarification, tonight is the introduction. So if, in fact, it is introduced tonight, we couldn't table it until after we have a public hearing at our next meeting. So what our options are this evening are twofold. It can be introduced, and then we could have a public hearing on it at our next meeting, and at that point it could be tabled. Or if there are not two sponsors to move it forward this evening, then it would not even be introduced at this time. So
Okay.
From a clerical standpoint, rules of order, that would be the appropriate steps. Okay?
I appreciate that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Browning, would you like the balance of your time back?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dean Browning. I live at 2432 West Congress Street in Allentown. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. Hayden, thank you very much for the invitation. I certainly appreciate the quickness that you all exhibited in moving forward with the request I made the last time I was before you. I see that you have as item number 6 under new business to vote on the resolution supporting House Bills 3003 and 3004, urging Senators Toomey and Casey to vote favorably for them when they come before them in the Senate. I certainly appreciate you doing that. Again, just briefly to recap, these bills deal with illegal immigration. I think if we consider it an immigration policy, I sum it up very succinctly. Those that should get in, get in. Those that shouldn't get in are kept out. And those that are here that shouldn't be will be required to leave. These two bills deal with that last item, those that are here that shouldn't be, and we need to have them go back to their country of origin. Both of these bills deal with that issue. House Bill 3004, Kate's Law, deals with those illegal aliens who have entered the country, committed crimes, been deported, and then return again to this country to commit additional crimes. House Bill 3003 deals with sanctuary cities, which give haven to illegal immigrants who come here and commit crimes. It is of interest that in the federal penitentiary system, there are roughly 183,000 inmates. Almost 1 in 4 of those is an illegal alien. These bills address that. I appreciate you voting favorably for the resolution. I hope it will inspire both Senators Toomey and Casey to vote favorably for these bills when it comes before them. I should remind you that both of these bills were passed in the U.S. House with favorable votes both by Congressman Charlie Dent and Congressman Matt Cartwright. And I notice in the resolution that you make note that your District Attorney Morganelli is strongly in favor of the action represented by these bills, particularly House Bill 3003. Again, I thank you for the time, and I thank you in advance for your favorable vote when the resolution comes before you. Thank you.
Thank
May
you.
I have a question?
Certainly.
May I ask a question?
Mrs. Ferraro.
Do you see any change in this bill when it comes because of DACA and trying to take care of these young kids?
No, I think DACA is a separate issue.
Separate, okay.
Yes. Again, both of these bills, and I wanted to make that clarification, and I thank you for bringing that up, and let me reiterate. Both of these bills deal with individuals that are here illegally and have committed crimes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. J. William Reynolds, Bethlehem.
Thank you. J. William Reynolds, 34 West Elizabeth Avenue, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. First thing I want to say is thank you. Actually, first thing I want to say is I'm on Bethlehem City Council, and this podium is a lot closer than we have in Bethlehem. So maybe I can take that back as a note. But I also want to say thank you to all of you guys for serving. Thank you for the executive here, Mr. Brown. I know now is not an easy time to be in public service as far as the government is concerned. It seems, and I'm sure you guys have these stories as well, is that Democrat, Republican, everybody's angry at the government for doing something, and they tend to throw everybody together. I just wanted to talk a little bit about LRTA in that conversation. And I was here for the committee meeting, and I want to thank you for your consideration, and I also want to thank the county for its past support for important projects in the city of Bethlehem. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that, you know, the biggest things that we had to be proud of right now in 2017 as far as steel stacks and our TIF over there and a lot of the development would not be possible without investment from Northampton County as well. And what you're going to be discussing today is something that we discussed on City Council last year, that the school district has discussed, and I'm just going to back up a little bit. I won't try to take too much of your time. I know at City Council we have 5 minutes, so it doesn't seem like you guys have that here. But
We're a little bit more flexible.
I'll keep it under 5 minutes. So I think it was probably about a year and a half ago or so when the administration and Mayor Donchez and Ms. Carner started talking to City Council about these particular neighborhoods that they were looking at with LRTA. And the way to kind of describe them is if you're in downtown Bethlehem and you go north of Broad Street, you tend to see a difference between the housing stock, between the commercial development, and it continues that way for several blocks up until you hit around Elizabeth Avenue, Washington Avenue, when you get into North Bethlehem, where I think if you kind of walked, you would see a noticeable difference. And these neighborhoods are traditional blue-collar neighborhoods, a lot of half-a-doubles, a lot of old steel workers were working here, and I mean, these were the neighborhoods, when we say Bethlehem Steel built Bethlehem, it's not just the steel that did, it's also the fact that at one time 20,000, 25, 30,000 people were living in these houses with middle-class incomes, and that's not necessarily what it is now. So the city administration came forward with LRTA in, I believe it was October of 2016, and we had a conversation about those boundaries. And the Bethlehem Area School District weighed in and said, we actually think you should move it a little bit this way. Moravian College and President Grigsby weighed in and said, we want to include these neighborhoods here. And what this really is part of a bigger strategy that the city has, that Mr. Donch and myself are working on that we've entitled Northside 2027. That's similar to Southside Vision 2014, which has worked great as far as investment in our South Side. And when we looked at these neighborhoods, we realized it wasn't just going to be LERTA. It wasn't just going to be what can we do as far as some type of tax break on improvements or commercial development. It needed to be much bigger than that. And we looked at these neighborhoods, William Penn and Thomas Jefferson and their traditional boundaries, and these people that were living in these neighborhoods, and we thought, well, what can we do? And Moravian talked about how they wanted to invest in the neighborhood, both as far as services are concerned and also physical investment, revenue investment, and the school district did as well. And one tool that we looked at, and it's right when we say LERT is not just a tool in the economic development tool bag, but it's also a tool in this bigger Northside 2027 vision. And we reached out to people, we reached out to Community Action Committee, we reached out to different community partners that are looking at different ways to invest here. And LERTA is one piece of that. And Mr. Kusi, you had a good question about the uniformity clause, and I know that you guys aren't voting tonight, and that's certainly an answer we can find. But I just want to stand here and say that part of what we're doing here is we're trying to get everybody on board. We're trying to, the city passed it unanimously, 7-0. The school district passed it unanimously, 9-0, with Dr. Roy being one of the biggest cheerleaders, saying that they're not giving up tax revenue. It's not necessarily tax revenue that's coming in right now, because that's not the way LERTA works. And we're here tonight not just to tell you about the program, and if you have any questions, I certainly can answer them, but ask us to join in kind of stepping forward as far as that investment is concerned. Our first Northside 2027 meeting is going to be held at Moravian College, and there's excitement among citizens, there's excitement among organizations as far as the school district is concerned, as far as Moravian is concerned, and what we have is another opportunity. And like I said, I understand that when you hear tax revenue and people giving up tax revenue, and it's a concern I had as well, and one of the things we're looking at in Bethlehem is actually something that I entitled, we had a committee meeting about last week, called Financial Accountability Incentive Reporting. Because we hear a lot, is a TIF working? Is LERTA working? Is a CRIS working? And one of the things that Council's working on with Ms. Carner and the administration is how do we track these programs? So when they come up for reauthorization, as far as how much tax revenue have they paid, how many jobs have they created, and things like that. So we understand a lot of the concerns. This is not something that is necessarily going to cost the taxpayers a lot of money, because it's not money that's coming in right now. And I guess the final thing I would say is, once again, I want to say thank you for your consideration here. If you have any questions, please, I guess your next meeting is in a couple weeks, and I'll be back then, but please feel free to reach out to me, to Ms. Carner, to the administration, and hopefully we can answer any questions by then. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Geisinger, your question?
One quick question. You mentioned the Northside meeting at Moravian.
Yes.
When is that going to be?
It's going to be, I believe, we set it for, it's a Wednesday, October 18th at 4 p.m.
10/18.
Yeah, and we can certainly get you that. We can certainly get you that information as well.
Thank you very much.
And like I said, just to follow up, we're going to see is, like, obviously this kind of investment is one piece of it, but it's actually much bigger than that. And one of the things that hopefully we're going to be able to do is, just like we did on the south side, is we're going to be able to show banks that want to invest in these areas, that have requirements to invest in lower income areas, look, all the taxing bodies are on board, Moravian, school district, community organizations, small businesses, and things like that. Thank you.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much. Okay. So the next person I have is Denise Mayatico, Lehigh.
Good evening. Denise
Welcome.
Mayatico, 58 Fairway Road, Lehigh. I'm Vice President of Meyer Jabara Hotels of the Lehigh Valley. I'm here tonight as a member of the hotel community. I'd like to ask that you give the Da Vinci project thorough consideration. This project anticipates driving a new demographic of visitors, and even more importantly to us, generating room nights. We believe that those room nights can really have a positive impact on occupancy of our hotels in Northampton County, and therefore create additional tourism revenue as well as hotel revenue and new hotel tax dollars. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had signed up. Is there anyone else that would like to address council this evening? There being none, we will move next into the next item of business, which is the Controller's Report. Is Mr. Barron here this evening? Mr. Barron is not here. Then we will move into the County Executive's Report. Mr. Brown.
Good evening, Council. Just two items for you this evening. The first is just to let you know that the lawsuit that was still outstanding against the P3 Bridge project ultimately has been settled. The the group bringing the lawsuit did not appeal the final decision, which supported actually the original opinion that we were in a right to be able to move forward with that. So that case has now been settled completely. So there's no other pending litigation against the bridge project at this time. So we're good to move forward with that. Second, I'd like to bring council to the attention of the, which you're probably familiar with at this point, the condition of the state budget. As we know, the Senate passed their version of it. The House is, I think, coming back into session on the 11th to take up the matter within the House. That being said, the governor has, I think, in the last day or so, has mentioned that the September 15th is a line in the sand with him relative to not having funds available to continue to pay certain obligations of the state moving forward, and those that are dependent as a county can potentially expect to have some challenges with that. That being said, the fiscal department has been very proactive to make sure that we're already beginning to take measures to anticipate any challenges with money that we would normally be receiving from the state. I'm here to let you know that we're in good shape. We'll be able to continue to function, keep our departments and their obligations financially satisfied until the state can find resolution to the budget issue overall. While I don't have a crystal ball to be able to tell you whether or not that's going to be short or long term, I have directed the finance department to go ahead and begin preliminarily have a discussion with our bank to begin to put in place a longer-term solution if it should be needed with that. We've just had preliminary conversations. At some point, obviously, we'll come to council when we need to formalize anything that we're doing. If it should begin to look like we're going to be on a long-term curve here at this point. But most importantly, I wanted to communicate A, to council, but B, those that might be concerned, that are dependent on the county for the services. When we went through this a couple of years ago, ultimately the county of our own money had let almost, I think it was $24 million is money that we had outlaid during the intervening budget crisis from the state level. We actually were net, just under the wire, but never had to borrow a dime in order to keep our services flowing. So I thought it was important to communicate that so that the constituents that are really depending on our services, they don't need to worry. We'll keep them, take care of it the best we can, and we'll continue to update the council as we move forward.
If I could just follow up on both of those items. Council received a significant letter from Lower Mount Bethel Township regarding the bridge project.
Yep.
I see Mr. Rugis is here. Is that something that you plan on addressing, their concerns?
Ultimately, the short answer is this: their concerns will be addressed during the normal course of designing and developing the bridges. Most of the questions that they have put into that letter is really things that would come through the DEP permitting process. Those are questions that normally would be answered anyway. So with regards to their letter, we acknowledge their letter, but it's nothing that we're concerned, and really is not going to impact the bridge project moving forward. Those matters will be addressed with Lower Mount Bethel at an appropriate time in an appropriate way.
Yeah, and then the other one is, since you raised the issue of state revenues, casino grants, has that impacted? I've neglected to ask Mr. Herlinger earlier this evening. How are you approaching that going forward?
Well, in terms of this fiscal year,
yes.
Basically we're just taking it quarter by quarter. I think we've actually received the allocations that we were expecting, at least, Jim, through the first two quarters. Yeah. And we would anticipate at least the third quarter. So we're just taking it on a measured basis going through as we're looking at the 2018 budget. And we're making some considerations for the 2018 budget. Hopefully we'll have clarity before I have to introduce the budget to this body at the end of the month. But we've taken some measured consideration in 2018. But for this year, we'll keep our fingers crossed that we keep getting the allocations moving forward.
Anything else for the executive this evening? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Council.
All right, next is old business. First item on the agenda is a presentation by the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority, and we'd like to welcome back one of our alumni, J. Michael Dowd.
Thank you, President Cusick. I have to say, old habits die hard. And when Council President Cusick asked for everyone who agreed to say aye, I darn near find myself saying aye. Some things are almost autonomic responses.
Yeah, Mike.
But thank you very much for inviting us to spend some time with you this evening and give you an update. You were very, very kind to us last year. We're trying to respond to both Northampton and Lehigh counties and providing you with regular updates as to what's happening at the airport. And I would remind you that our first public meeting of the authority this year is going to be our September meeting. Will be the last Tuesday in September, and it will be held in the evening. So it'll be, as all our meetings are open to the public, should be more accessible to the public at that time. I think as you're aware, there have been some changes at the airport since we were here last, and one of the most significant is standing with me. Tom Stout is now the interim director of the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority. Tom is a longtime member of our staff. He has fulfilled many responsibilities and really began at the ground up. And so we're lucky to have him, and he's really been an excellent guide, and I think we're in excellent position with him. We have a number of other people with us. I'll just introduce them to you. Todd Kwan, who is our CFO, was recently recognized as the outstanding CFO for nonprofits in the Lehigh Valley. Colin Riccabon, who is our new communications director, who has been a remarkable asset to us in every regard. Eddie Lozano is a representative on the authority from Northampton County, and he's been a real asset to us as we begin working on finances. Certainly, Sylvette Rivera is here, and for those of you who don't know what goes on at the airport, everything really flows through her, and she's the person who makes things work. But we do have Bernie admonished me not to say we'll be brief, and so I will not say we'll be brief, but I'll say we won't be long. And I think that may be, he's gone.
No, he's over there.
Oh, there he is. That may be
He's taking pictures, Michael.
In any case, I want to defer to Tom and allow him to update you on the things that are happening at the airport. I would encourage you to ask questions as we go through, because I think that's the most opportune way to gather information, and I'll work to amplify anything that Tom might share with us. But, Tom?
Okay, thank you, Mike. Good evening, members of council. As Mike said, we just wanted to provide a little bit of an update on the Airport Authority's airport system tonight, walk through a few slides, and certainly answer any questions you have about the airport system. So here's
thanks for these great screens. That makes a big, big difference from the old screen we used to have.
I'm just not sure which one to look at.
Well, you need to thank yourself. You're a taxpayer in this county, Mike.
So thank me, yes.
So the agenda is laid out before you. Just a couple of items that we will run through, and we'll try to get through this in a reasonable time. About 6 months ago, the board and the executive staff for the organization decided to hold a strategic retreat. And the purpose of that retreat was really to establish the organization's priorities moving forward into the next 5 years. After a little bit of spirited dialogue during that retreat, we really came to the place of recognizing that in addition to developing this strategic framework for the organization, we actually needed to develop a new vision and new mission. And we have these here before you. And a pretty aggressive vision to be the best regional airport system in North America, I think we would agree. How do we get there is through our strategic framework. The strategic framework really provides the roadmap for us to focus in on those objectives identified in our strategic plan. And it really guides us on a daily basis. Every member of the team at the Airport Authority has a role in furthering the mission, helping to achieve that great vision. So just a quick update on some of the stats for the airport system. ABE, fourth largest airport in the state. We do have 4 passenger air carriers, American Delta, United, and a low-cost carrier, Allegiant. We have 11 nonstop destinations, just under 700,000 passengers last year, our highest since 2013. And our air cargo is probably the larger story that you see about, and about 165% growth in 2016. And we're continuing to see that growth in 2017. In terms of our financials, our independent audit report was performed. We did provide copies, and I think we emailed copies again to council this evening. We do have hard copies available if that's of interest. Crowe and Horwath was selected back in October 2015 as our independent auditor. And Crowe and Horwath has extensive experience with airports. They do a lot of this type of work for airports and airport authorities across the country. We were excited to work with them. It's been a very interactive process, and we did receive an unqualified opinion. And we think in terms of how we're working with one of our board members, Ed Lozano, Todd Kwan, our CFO, the way that we're reporting our financial information each month, I think, has really improved in terms of how we get that information out very clear. And I think, Mike, you would attest to the same.
Yeah, I would say, quite frankly, the authority members have a much better idea of our finances than we've ever had before. They get I shouldn't say shortcutted, but they really provide the dynamic information that we need. And I think rather than going through 8 or 9 pages of financial report, thanks to Eddie and to Todd, we're in much better shape than we had been before.
And so in terms of what's happening at ABE, we've got some new air service. So we had a press conference at the PPL Center in November where we had a Legionnaire announce their Fort Lauderdale service. That began February 15th, and we had a little promotion there, pretty exciting. We gave away a couple of round-trip tickets right around Valentine's Day, so that was our Love is in the Air promotion. In terms of our nonstop destinations, we have them up here on the map for you. Great service to all of the hubs and to all the leisure destinations in Florida. Pretty excited to be partners with Allegiant. You may have read in the news recently, Allegiant will not be serving Wilkes-Barre-Scranton Airport starting in January, and they've reduced service in Trenton. So we're very excited to continue to be strong partners with Allegiant and hopeful that will continue to provide excellent service for the community.
They've really worked to direct their passengers from those markets to come to Lehigh Valley.
The Multimodal Transportation Center. So we had our ribbon cutting last month, and this is a $5.5 million project. We received about $1.7 million from PennDOT to perform this project. Really a consolidated facility, provides much increased level of service for our customers. Instead of 1,000 steps to get out to the rental car area, it's only about 300 now. So remarkable improvement. Partnership with Lanta and TransBridge is part of this. And we're still working very actively with some of our ride-sharing services. We've had calls as recently as yesterday with Lyft and Uber. We continue to provide some additional ideas about how we can get that service right to the terminal area. And so we think we're making a lot of progress and hope to have an announcement soon on that. In terms of the airport at Lehigh Valley, there's an airport master plan study that we have, basically a 20 to 25 year look into the future. It's a short kind of and medium and long-term plan rolled into one. But essentially the plan is underway. We started this back in September of 2016. We've had a public workshop in April, and we'll be continuing to have some more workshops. One is coming up either October, November timeframe, looking for early summer completion on this document. And so far have had some excellent public participation in this process. So you don't get headlines like this without great work. And on behalf of the authority, we certainly want to thank this council. The money that we received helped generate these headlines, the hard work by the authority board members, by the staff, to put these headlines together. It's a dramatic change from the headlines you read about Braden Air Park about a year ago. So what is happening at Braden? Well, in April of 2016, we did have our Board of Governors meeting at Braden Air Park. We did a tour, and we passed a resolution about keeping Braden Air Park operational. But beyond just keeping it operational, we made a commitment to develop the business, to attract new tenants. So there's a renewed commitment on the part of the authority. And that goes a long way. And in terms of how we're going to achieve some of these things, we're looking to use the finances. And how is the money going to be spent that the county provided? Well, that $250,000 is already being spent. We've repaired several roofs, structures on our 4 bulk hangars. We've also done some pavement repair. The next phase, we'll get into schedule in just a moment, but you can see kind of a list of some of the projects, which include a new modular terminal, and we're moving forward. And how does that lay out for the rest of the year? I'll show you on the next slide. This is just everything in red here is money that the LNAA will be spending. Everything in blue is relative to county funds that will be spent as were provided under that economic development grant.
Yeah, well, one of the key issues I remember was the lack of a fixed base operator. Have you addressed that situation?
So we do have a fixed base operation that is provided by the authority, but we continue to work with some existing tenants based on some interest we've received about providing specialty services at the airport. We've had some great negotiations recently about establishing a maintenance provider at that facility, and we think that could, coupled with these improvements and the money provided by the county, could go a long way to furthering that mission.
In fact, there are leases and contracts that are currently in the possession of the potential tenant, and we fully believe they're going to be exercised in the very, very short-term future. So the answer to that is yes.
Just in terms of the schedule, we actually had a pre-bid meeting today for this project, all the project elements you saw on the previous slide, and we had 18 firms that attended that pre-bid meeting. So excellent attendance, a lot of enthusiasm at Braden for the projects. You can see the schedule here will be brought, the bids will be opened and brought to our evening September meeting on the 26th for approval or consideration. Also, the actual construction duration for hangar improvements will move into the October-November timeframe. We'll be looking to install that modular terminal in December. In terms of the next steps, we did receive, folks may have noticed a grant that was issued to the authority in the amount of $325,000. That's a 50-50 match with the authority. So we'll have $650,000 to work on site selection, design, and construction of a brand new terminal facility on that site. So working with the airport layout and determining the best place to provide a good access for the community, the ability to stop by the airpark and take a look at the activity over there. We're really excited about this one. So over $1 million worth of investment in this facility in the coming months. So pretty exciting. In terms of community engagement, we wanted to talk a little bit about this. Back on August 26th, we had a fly-in drive-in, and we have a little video we wanted to share. That's supposed to have sound.
Has been here for so long.
This is our first time. We just moved here.
The first movie outdoors at all, so.
All right, it's super cool on an airfield, right?
Yep, super cool. We're excited.
I think it's wonderful. I would love to see more of it. It's a great opportunity for just people to hang out outside on the grass and just kind of get back to nature where it should be. It's a great idea.
Oh, it's awesome. Everything's going really good so far. The music's great. We're having fun. Yep.
Are you excited for the movie on the airfield tonight?
Something different. I mean, how often do you get to come to an airport and watch a movie at the airport with the planes flying over and the vendors and events? It's just a wonderful time for a Saturday night over here.
I was thinking about my own childhood. I lived not too far from LaGuardia Airport in New York City. I'd love to go watch the planes take off and land there. I think the way to pique the imagination and think about the possible for youngsters is to show them this kind of opportunity and, light a fire in their imagination.
I ain't balloon like you go to space. Yeah, like I don't care, baby, by the way. 'Cause I'm in love, you feel like a
Importantly, from the authority standpoint, it says that Braden is an important place for us. It's an important part of our organization. We're going to continue all that we can to keep this remarkable community resource here. This is a marvelous way for us to take care of people in the Eastern community. And I suspect we've got people here from Bethlehem and Allentown who are interested in GA and interested in supporting this organization.
So just in terms of upcoming event at Braden, we do have a polo match. Pretty exciting. This is our third annual polo match at Braden with our partnership with Equilibrium out of Nazareth. So we're excited to have this on Sunday, September 17th. please stop out. In terms of other community engagement, at ABE, we did unveil a children's play area in our departure building through a partnership with Lehigh Valley Health Network. Fantastic play area in an underutilized portion of our departure building. Really created a great space for kids and for parents to pass the time in the terminal. So we're excited to have that. And the Wings for All, really through a partnership, terrific partnership with the ARC of Lehigh and Northampton counties, really impacting hundreds of families and individuals in our community. We did receive Volunteerism Award of the year, so this was provided last September. Very excited to have a continued partnership with the ARC. It's been a strong event. Also, our pre-check, TSA pre-check, over 4,600 people who have participated in pre-check at this point. We're having our next session 2 weeks in October, the first 2 weeks of October, the 2nd through the 13th. So if you're interested in enrolling, you can do that right at the terminal at ABE. In terms of our public access, Colin, I want to thank Colin for all his work behind the camera and providing the YouTube feeds for our board meetings. About 1,500 views since April of last year. And again, in an effort to provide that public access, the evening meeting this September to help folks if they'd like to attend in person. And that's the extent of the presentation we have for you this evening. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions from members of council at this time?
I would like to make
Mr.
a comment.
Geisinger?
As a member of the Board of Governors and as a liaison from this body to the authority, I want to thank both Tom and Chairman Dowd. The work that has been done at all of the facilities, but in particularly on Braden Air Park. I remember coming to meetings a few years back, and Braden Air Park was on the chopping block, and there was a real attitude about disposing of that and taking that asset and turning it into liquid money in order to help a problem, which would have been a short-term fix to what had become a long-term problem. Instead, the Board of Governors, along with the staff and senior staff and a lot of the people that are in this room tonight, took the attitude of a long-term fix to a valuable asset for Northampton County. And I appreciate that leadership, and I appreciate the efforts, and I think the investment that you showed tonight is part of that. And I'm excited to watch more shovels in the ground and more things get fixed. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Anything else from members of council? Then I just had one other question. One of the ongoing issues that I hear from the public is the significant land development that's happening around LVI or ABE to some of us old timers. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And I think the concern I hear most is some of the warehouse development, and particularly with regard to the zoning in East Allen Township.
A couple of things. One is, at a recent meeting of the authority, and Councilman Geisinger will I think, support this, what we said is our role is we have a fiduciary responsibility to provide the best possible use of assets the airport has. We do have an asset in East Allen Township. Our goal, frankly, I was at that last meeting in East Allen Township, is to have a development done by a developer that is sensitive to the interests and needs of the community. And that means we wanted to hear from them and see what can best be done to meet that need. I know there are concerns about warehousing development. We believe Rockefeller has done some things to mitigate the truck impacts, but obviously that's a concern. We want to be sensitive to that. On the other hand, as we look at Hanover Township, Northampton County, we do possess a significant amount of acreage in Hanover Township. We've been in negotiation with both Jay Finnegan and John Diakianis with regard to that. We're fully conversant with their interest in development of that property. We've identified at this point 7 potential developers for that site. And right now we're trying to work out a deal so that we don't have 7 developers going to Hanover Township and trying to get hearings. But our goal there, we know what they want. And so our goal, rather than necessarily selling land, is we've asked for opportunities to partner in development so that we don't have a one-time land sale where we take money and simply have it in the bank, but rather we've developed my goal is to develop a long-term financial strength for the airport. So as we look at Hanover Township, I think we've got some real opportunities to do a good job and generate some jobs.
I just want to say congratulations and thank you. It was 4 years ago, I remember well, when this room was filled and we were talking about getting rid of Braden's. And thank you so much for the hard work and for the complete turnaround that you've done for our county.
We thank you all for your support and your patience. So thank you very much.
For our county.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Very good. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
All right. Moving along, that is all we had under old business. Is there any other old business that any member of council would like to discuss at this time? Okay. There being none, we will move into new business. First item on the agenda is the introduction of an ordinance titled An Ordinance to Create the program plan known as Facilities and Tourism Enhancement Hotel Room Rental Tax Grant Program to be administered by the Northampton County Department of Community and Economic Development to expend revenues previously expended under the non-expired Northampton County Ordinance number 484-2008 pursuant to the hotel room rental tax of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, 16 Public Statute 1770, and the Tourist Promotion Law of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, 73 PS 401, etc. At this time, we've already had some discussion about this. We would need 2 people to sponsor the ordinance. Would anyone like to sponsor it at this time? Okay, so there is no sponsorship, and this will be set aside. Okay. Second is introduction of an ordinance titled An Ordinance Providing for an Amendment to the Northampton County Home Rule Charter, Article 3, County Executive, Section 304, Special Prohibition to provide for term limits for the Office of Executive of the County of Northampton, Easton, Pennsylvania. Mr. Bennell and I are co-sponsoring this. The public hearing, debate, and possible vote will be held at the September 21st, 2017 meeting, and I anticipate having a governance committee meeting the day before because there's no capital projects meeting scheduled. The next item is the introduction of an ordinance entitled An Ordinance by Northampton County Council concurring with the City of Bethlehem and the Bethlehem Area School District and providing for property tax exemption for certain deteriorated property as defined in Ordinance 2017-13 of the City of Bethlehem pursuant to Act 76 of 1977 of the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as amended, 72 Public Statute 4722, and Act 42 of 1977 of the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as amended, 72 Public Statute subsection 4711-101, and agreeing with the amendment to Article 342 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Bethlehem entitled Local Economic Redevelopment Tax Assistance Enterprise Development Area. At this time, I will ask for 2 members to co-sponsor. Mrs. Ferraro is one.
And Mr. Kraft had asked if, even though he's not here this evening, he had asked to be a sponsor.
I'll sponsor Mr. Kraft.
Okay, so Mr. Werner and Mrs. Ferraro are co-sponsoring the ordinance. Then the public hearing, debate, and possible vote will be held at the September 21st, 2017 meeting. Next item is a consideration of a resolution amending resolution number 124-2016, and this would normally be personnel, and Mr. Kraft is not here, so I will call on Mr. Geisinger, who is a member of that committee, to introduce the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. These are essentially housekeeping items to adjust from earlier decisions that had come down from council, and it is therefore resolved that council resolution number 126-2016 shall be amended as indicated hereafter. And it is resolved that Northampton County Council has 1 full-time position of Deputy Aging Administrator, pay grade, and the cross-out is HS 46-1A and replaced with HS 43-1A, with a salary with a cross-out of $65,923 replaced with $57,769. in the Department of Human Services Area Agency on Aging Division, created effective that first day of January 2017.
Okay, so was that resolution 124-216 or?
That was 126-2. My apologies.
Oh, so we're on the one that should be.
I went out of
124.
order. My apologies.
Okay.
On 124-216, whereas Northampton County Council Resolution 124-216, 2016 shall be amended as indicated hereafter, have been deleted, and have then been crossed out. It is resolved by Northampton County Council that one full-time position of Accountant 2, pay grade CS 25-1A, salary $51,463 in the Department of Fiscal Affairs, and Recorder of Deeds is crossed out, and instead Financial Planning and Control Division has been replaced. Shall be created effective the first day of January 2017.
Okay. These were mostly housekeeping items that were recommended by the Personnel Committee last month, but the paperwork hadn't been submitted in time for our meeting. Is there any further discussion with regards to 124-2016? There being none, Ms. Zembo, can we call the vote?
Mr. Geisinger?
Yes.
Mr. Deep?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
And Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Passed by a vote of 8-0.
Okay, and now back to the resolution amending number 126-2016.
Okay, as mentioned before, 126-216, 2016 is amended in this way. The pay grade HS 46-1A has been changed to HS 43-1A, and the salary of $65,923 has been amended to $57,769. And this is again in the Department of Human Services Area Agency on Aging.
Okay, again, this was discussed and recommended at last month's Personnel Committee, but due to time constraints, it was not on the agenda. Any further discussion on this resolution? There being none, Ms. Zembo, can we call the vote?
Mr. Geisinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
And Mr. Deep?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8-0.
Okay, so both items pass unanimously by votes of 8-0. Next item under new business is consideration of a resolution supporting H.R. 3003 and H.R. 3004. And I'll call on Mr. Phillips to introduce the resolutions.
Thank you. Let me read the resolution. Whereas H.R. 3003, No Sanctuary for Criminal Act, was passed by the House of Representatives and amended the Immigration and Nationalization Act to prohibit any federal, state, or local government from prohibiting any government entity, official, or employee from complying with the immigration laws, of cooperating with federal law enforcement and such laws, and whereas H.R. 3004, Kate's Law, was passed by the House of Representatives and provided that an alien who has been excluded, deported, removed, or denied admission, or who has been deported, who has departed the United States while under an outstanding order of exclusion, deportation, or removal, and who subsequently crosses or attempts to cross the border into the United States shall be fined, imprisoned not more than 2 years, or both. And whereas H.R. 3003, No Sanctuary for Criminal Act, and H.R. 3004, Kate's Law, were both passed by the House of Representatives with bipartisan support from Congressman Charlie Dent, Republican, PA 15th District, and Congressman Matthew Cartwright, Democrat, PA 17th District, representing Northampton County, voted in favor of both pieces of legislation. And whereas in his October 1st, 2003 testimony before the House Subcommittee on Immigration, Border Security, and Claims, Northampton County District Attorney John Morganelli testified as to the substantial negative impact of illegal aliens on crime, national security, and the direct cost to taxpayers. It is therefore hereby resolved that the Northampton County Council supports H.R. 3003 and H.R. 3004 and encourages both Pennsylvania United States Senators Patrick Toomey, Republican, Pennsylvania, and Robert Casey, Democrat, Pennsylvania, to vote in support of them. And I'd also like to add, since I had referenced the DA's testimony before Congress in 2003, I passed this resolution along to Mr. Morganelli, and he said that he has no problems with me mentioning his testimony. I liked his testimony because he has spoken and written on different aspects of illegal immigration. The testimony before Congress is still current, still relevant, and in that he covered, all aspects. He covered the effect of national security, covered the effects on the criminal justice system, and he covered the effects on the cost to the taxpayer. That's why I referenced that. And Mr. Morganelli sends me this. I cannot be present on September 7th. However, I have been against sanctuary cities, counties for 17 years, and I support Kate's law. In Northampton County, as Chief Law Enforcement Officer, I've advised local and state police that we work with ICE. This has been placed for many, many years. So he wanted me, or gave me permission to read his endorsement.
Okay. Any further discussion regarding this resolution? No? Okay. Ms. Zembo, can we call the vote?
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Geisinger?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Bennell? Yes. Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8 to 0.
Passes by a vote of 8 to 0. That was all we had this evening under new business. Is there any other new business that any member would like to bring up at this time? Mr. Warner?
If I may. In June of this year, we had Kevin Dolan speak in front of us
Yes.
about children and youth. And he, September 6th, Mr. Phillips, myself, State Representative Bob Freeman, Administrator Dolan, Director Allison France, Kathy Allen, Director Rose Farina, the Research Development people Julie Bader, I hope I said that right, Program Director Lisa Hand, and Program Director of Intake Pat Himmelwright met at the Human Services Building to discuss not just the problem but how to solve it, okay? And we brought Representative Freeman in, and this is also going to be presented in front of the governor and also to our, not just to Dee Pasquale, but to a couple other people. Their wish list, which is what no one has been asking since 2015, has finally come to fruition. They're asking to simplify the current civil service program as utilized because it's lengthy. They're asking to combine and reduce current risk assessment plans that cause many problems because they're 12 pages and 15 pages long, okay? And we're supposed to, Hayden and I will be discussing that with CCAP with Brenda Penyak, okay? We're doing a follow-up, a formal letter which suggests Northampton County work with the state, and we're also, which was brought up, which I was not aware of, was they're moving, we're suggesting to move the office for hearings back to Northampton County. Apparently they're taking these programs and anything that takes place with the children, and they have to drive all the way to Berks County, which has been a huge problem and existed, which no one knew about, okay? And we're going to be speaking with Judge Sletvold and Judge Daly on that. We're going to review this with the State Department of Human Services, the key issues regarding kinship with home assessment, how licensing is done, and the required 20 hours of training that need to be handled. There will be some suggestions of how to do the training and keep it at home for those people that are taking these children in. And the best practice guidelines will be that Northampton County's Children and Youth Division has been given high accolades in a time when they probably restrained. And I think it's imperative that this council back and do as much as they can above and beyond just a local level to get these problems resolved for our caseworkers or for the people that are struggling to take care of all the problems that are results of opioid programs and children that are being abused. And I just wanted the council to know about that. And I thank Kevin and all the people that were involved for taking the initial steps to do just more than talk about it.
Any other new business this evening? There being none, we will move into council committee reports. Any committee? Mr. Phillips?
Yeah, since we had such a very good meeting in August, we are not having one in September. But we have a hurricane coming up in our area, and I've talked to Stan about that. And Stan, are you ready to just take a minute to give us a brief on your preparation?
Do we have generators?
are the generators up and working?
Generators,
Let Stan address it.
Who brought up generator? Who was it?
Go ahead, Stan.
In working with Kathy and administration, we developed a strategy in terms of having O&M people on site during the duration. We not only suspect that we are going to have a heavy rain event, probably not as bad with the winds though, but it's even the hurricane that's following up. So we are taking special precautions in terms of what we do need to do. We have engaged an electrician to be ready to be on site. He is also going to understand for the entire county, not only Greystone, but here for Juvie and for the rest of the courthouse complex. So if there is an issue, they're ready to jump. So that's pretty much the long and short of it.
Thanks, Stan.
You're welcome.
All right. Want to talk about the generators?
Any other committee? Yeah, nothing about the generators?
They're coming. Soon this year.
Mrs. Ferraro?
The Economic Development Committee meeting met, God, my tongue's twisted here. But anyway, we had a very a full agenda. We talked about the 2018 hotel tax, the 2005 hotel tax, SIPA, and LERTA, plus an update and of course some great news of things that are happening in the department.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to follow up on was I'm glad to hear that we're moving ahead with the Airbnb and the hotel tax because that's been something that I've been urging you to do, and I look forward to seeing that move forward. We also did receive an email from CCAP that there is potential legislation to do something like this statewide, rather than have individual counties having to cut specific agreements with these online hoteliers. So hopefully that'll show some movement. Council liaison, any liaison reports this evening? Okay. Council clerk, anything?
Nothing.
Okay, we have nothing this evening. Solicitor, Mr. Lauer?
Just briefly, Hayden asked me to share with you some information. And before I do, I want to apologize for sneezing throughout the meeting. I think I'm allergic to Peg. I think that's. Hayden had written a request to someone in procurement inquiring about whether we had a certain contract, and if so, what the terms of that contract were. And Hayden then received a response from a party in the administration essentially inquiring as to why he was making that inquiry, and that contracts are an administrative function, not a legislative function. Hayden then asked me whether it was appropriate and lawful for us to, not us, for members of council to be making inquiries of that kind to members of the administration. And he asked me to cover this tonight, and I responded by indicating that members of council have every right to make that kind of an inquiry. Section 202(8) of the Home Rule Charter specifically gives council the right to require periodic and special reports from elected officials and their subordinates. And I would also point out that 202(13) actually gives council the right to compel the attendance of witnesses and the production of documents and any other evidence at any investigative hearings that you might decide to hold. So I've been asked to comment on this and provide my opinion, and I think you have the right to make those types of inquiries, and when you do, I think the administration has the obligation to respond.
Just for a point of clarification, that would require a vote of the entire council, not just one individual member.
To hold the...
Yes.
No, not to make an inquiry.
To make an inquiry, certainly they can do that on their own, but I'm saying that a specific action would require the majority of council to do those things.
compel
Yes.
the issuance of a subpoena and that sort of thing? Yes, absolutely. Right. It's not, that would be something that would have to be done by council as a body.
But
Correct.
let me just follow that up then. But an individual member, if they would like information, would simply file a right to know act if they feel that they are obstructed from obtaining that. Am I correct in that?
You could file a right to know request, correct? I mean, there are a lot of, as you know, exceptions to right to know requests. But my point is that your home rule charter actually gives council the right to require reports from elected officials and their subordinates.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Lauer this time? Mr. Brown?
Just continuing that conversation, the same legislation also says that it's the executive and his administration that administers the information under question. The request that was made by Mr. Phillips for the information, we sent through a clarifying question as to what the nature of that information is for. The administration of those contracts and vendors is the direct responsibility of the administration, clearly. It also then goes to a sense of efficiency. The administration has a right to say, well, if you have inquiries, send them. It'll be up to myself to determine how we'll vet those requests overall and how that information will then be conveyed back to council overall. We've worked very hard to provide as much information to council on a regular basis. There is also at a time where let's just put it this way, that certain inquiries can become overdone. Extensive amounts of time of the administration staff are spent in compiling information, so on and so forth at times that we're trying to be efficient and manage the process as well as possible. So this is not a matter of the administration not providing any information that the council has asked for. But there are protocols and requests that we're making in return for providing that information. So I don't believe council has had to go through the subpoena process. As a matter of fact, with the number of committee meetings, I think the administration provides a robust amount of information in support of the committee meetings that actually are designed to elicit and bring forth the information that most of council requires and asked overall. So just to put a clarification
Sure.
To the communication that has taken place, and it's a little bit out of context in the way it was delivered back.
Okay. Mr. Phillips?
To that point, though, John, I mean, if a councilman asks, do we have a contract with a vendor? And if so, what are the terms of that contract? It's the first time I've asked that question in 3.5 years, and I don't get an answer. I mean, that to me is,
You did get an answer. You just didn't like the answer, and the answer was, "What's the basis for the information?"
See, I don't feel I have a right to. I have an obligation to tell you.
Part of the requirement of the administration is to also make sure if there are issues or concerns that we're aware of them, because it is our body that would interact with that provider overall.
So I think that what I'd have to do if I want information on a contract, I think the best way to do it is to have a resolution to see if I can get that approved and put forth a formal request, or do a right to know. If I do a right to know, part of the right to know law is I don't have to tell you why I'm interested in that.
Oh, that's absolutely correct. But if that's a path you choose or council would choose to go down, which I wouldn't recommend, it's blowing it out of proportion. Like I said, the administration is trying to be efficient. People are contacted all the time. We're trying to channel those communications to make sure several things. One, depending on who's contacted about a particular contract, they may not have the full information that myself and the other senior members of the administration would have going forward. So the communication that is then brought back to council, it's my job to make sure that communication is vetted and is appropriate and current when it is delivered back. So I don't think it's out of line for the administration to request how communication should be channeled in requests that come back and how that communication will be brought forth. Nowhere along the way has this administration ever not provided the information that council has asked for, even on individual council members' basis. And you in particular, Mr. Phillips, would know that members of my staff have gone spend a considerable amount of time meeting individual requests for this council. We have not requested resolutions as would be per the legal documents overall, and we do the best we can to accommodate those requests and to bring that information to council on a regular basis.
Okay, nothing else for the solicitor this evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Any further business to come before council at this time?
Motion to
Do
adjourn.
we have a Mr. Hurlinger has...
Thank you, council.
You're like that student that always has a question at the very end, right when the bell rings.
Bing. I'll be very brief. In our 2018 hotel tax recommendations, which you have before you, which you have received, there are 3 items I want to point out. The Miracle League and Stevens Place, we recommend that you set aside $10,000 or $15,000 in Org 30800. This will come before you at budget time from the general fund to fund those. And DCED recommends that you do that on a regular basis because we feel they really don't belong in a competitive environment for tourism. They're really social benefit organizations. So we recommend that. Then as far as the County Historical and Genealogical Society, we also recommend that council consider setting aside $100,000 a year for, let's say, 5 years or whatever term is appropriate to council to support that organization and take it out of not only the competitive environment, because it's an important and vital part of the county's activities, but it's also something you like to fund and you like to support. So we see that as a recommendation for a line item. And you can either use that from general funds, you could use it from a combination of hotel tax funds or a variety of different sources. That's not important to me. What's important to me is to recommend to you that if council feels strongly about supporting that, then we would recommend using that as a line item, and we'll cooperate and help in any way we can at the budget time to help make that happen.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they have a hard time from year to year with their budget, with the flexibility that it's entailed involving the hotel tax. So I think that those are both...
We just don't feel it's competitive in a tourist thing because it's really social benefit organizations and an organization of special interest to the council.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Mr. Geisinger, seconded by Mr. Bennell. Have a nice evening, everyone. Right from Florida.